Welcome back to the final installment of my DIY UVLightBox build. We are finally assembling the box. Peep the final secret panel that I did not film the painting process for hopefully obvious reasons. My biggest tip today is to make sure you have all of the proper parts needed for any big project before starting it, because I did not do that here. For two different things. You saw me drilling out the holes for the heat set inserts, and that's because I realized too late that I did not have the proper size of screws that I needed when I originally designed this. So I had to bump my plans up to a 3mm insert and screw instead, which is fine. It's only a bit of a bummer because now I'm short on 3mm screws for other things. You know what I mean? So always make sure you're planning ahead for this kind of thing. There is something else that you'll see later I will talk more on that I failed to check before I started working on this. Now, as you can probably tell, I have definitely used my hot iron before, but definitely not for heat set inserts. One of the nifty parts about printing with plastic is that you can melt it down when it's done, either using a hot iron or a heat gun, just depending on your needs for your project. This is usually done for things like finishing, so if you have any rough surfaces or just weird print anomalies that showed up throughout the process, you can take a hot iron and either melt those down flat or completely cut them off with it. The finish you get isn't great depending on what kind of filament you're using and how you're using the hot end, because once you melt it down again after it's done printing, it actually changes some of the visual properties of the plastic. So this technique is better reserved for your semi-matte filaments, but definitely not on things like satin filaments, because the overall texture and visual shine will change drastically. And sometimes that can be a good thing, but in most instances you really want to keep the original finish as untainted as possible. So I typically reserve using my hot end for finishing for just personal use items, or if there's anything that could probably use a haphazard cleanup method. Now here I'm actually starting to insert the UV LED strip into these little channels that I designed throughout the box. However, it's at this point that I realized I can no longer find my longer UV light strip. I know I bought one. I know it exists. It's somewhere in my workspace here, but alas, I am stuck using this all too short UV light strip instead. So the box is mostly complete. I will have to go back and replace this strip at some point once I find the real one, but this will hopefully get me by to actually start making my next earring design, which I'm really stoked about.